Top 10 richest people in the world. Number 10, Steve Ballmer.
Even more? No, it's just $99. Developers, 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 developers. Developers, 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 developers. Developers! We're developers! We're developers!
Oh, he was apoplectic in a way. I mean, he didn't try to stop me, but I remember when I called home and my dad said, "What the heck is software?" He'd actually been involved installing Wang systems, old word processors, but what software? And then my mom said, "Why would a person ever need a computer?" Now, today you'd say that's crazy, but it wasn't crazy in 1980. But they said, okay, we hear you, we hear you. If it doesn't work out, you go back to business school, right? I said, right. And then never came back. But we needed to professionalize. I was the HR department. I hired everybody. When IBM came the first time about their personal computer, I became the kind of salesman on IBM. Why? I knew how to wear a tie. I was about the only guy around the place, and Bill said, "Well, you have a tie and a suit. Why don't you come to the meeting?" So by the late 80s, I would say for sure, I knew the company was going to be something. I remember when Andy Grove, who ran Intel, said, "Someday there'll be 100 million computers a year sold." Bill and I looked at each other and said, "He's nuts. There's never going to be 100 million. And these days, there's 300 million plus computers sold a year."
And your father and mother, what did they say at this point?
Yeah, and they got comfortable when we went public. They knew I wasn't going to be broke. Bill actually offered me a decent starting salary. It was either 40 or 50 grand, I can't remember, which looked good in that day and age. So they knew that was a good choice. Now my dad still had a little skepticism. There were all these people, and there was nothing physical. You could get what do all these people do? There's no product. What do they all do? So that was a confusing point. I mean, he's a smart guy.
First launch, we were hoping for, maybe 400, 500 people.
Number
Harvard
9.
didn't have a Facebook, so that's the gap
Mark
that we were trying to fill.
Zuckerberg.
And now we're at 100,000 people, so who knows where we're going next. We're hoping to have many more universities by the fall, hopefully over 100 or 200. And from there, we're going to launch a bunch of side applications, which should keep people coming back to the site and maybe could make something cool.
What is the Facebook exactly?
It's an online directory that connects people through universities and colleges through their social networks there. You sign on, you make a profile about yourself by answering some questions, entering some information such as your concentration or major at school, contact information about phone numbers, instant messaging screen names, anything you want to tell, interests, what books you like, movies, and most importantly, who your friends are. And then you can browse around and see who people's friends are and just check out people's online identities and see how people portray themselves and just find some interesting information about people.
I love this place. Thank you all for coming out in the rain, the pouring rain. We're going to make this worth it for you. President Faust, Board of Overseers, faculty, friends, alumni, proud parents, members of the ad board, and graduates of the greatest university in the world. Today, I want to talk about purpose. But I'm not here to give you the standard commencement about finding your purpose. We're millennials. We try to do that instinctively. Instead, I'm here to tell you that finding your purpose isn't enough. The challenge for our generation is to create a world where everyone has a sense of purpose.
That's a
Number 8.
fantastic question.
Sergey
Let
Brin.
me just tell all of you that you maybe should doubt my answers a little bit. So when I was heading up Google X a few years back, And one little project we had in there, which is now called Google Brain, which was this AI effort, but I didn't pay attention to it at all, to be perfectly honest. And myself having been trained as a computer scientist in the 90s, everybody knew AI didn't work. It's not like, people tried it. They tried neural nets. None of them worked out. And this fellow who was, one of our top computer scientists, Jeff Dean, would periodically come up with me and, look, the computer made a picture of a cat. And I'd say, OK, that's very nice, Jeff. Go, do your thing, whatever. To forecast accurate, talking about, well, how do we cope with this increased automation here and the jobs displaced and so forth? And I feel like the one like, actually that's pretty hard to do with a computer, and I kind of know what we're trying to accomplish to make that technology work. And I think a lot of folks here are, I think, correctly forward-thinking, taking some of those innovations for granted, and then saying, well, what does that mean for society and so forth? I think that's the right thing to do. I think thinking through sort of AI as the continuing of the automation that we've seen in the past 200 years, and how that evolves society and economy and social order, that's the smart thing to do. I don't think it's sort of impossible somehow, but it deserves a lot of thought.
I think there's an assumption that people who study language use language better.
And
what
number 7.
Are saying that people say you
Bill Gates.
overuse. In fact, when they did a spoof magazine about me, there was an article titled, "He Ran Out of Superlatives Early in Life." Because I'd always say, this is the best thing ever, or this is the stupidest thing ever. When I was running Microsoft, we were kind of trying to move at high speed. And so I did kind of
Everything
go
is
overboard.
superlative.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Change, new ideas. It's way greater than the pandemic. And it needs a level of cooperation that would be unprecedented.
That doesn't sound
No,
feasible.
it's not easy. But hey, we have
impossible.
30 years. We have more educated people than ever. We have a generation that's speaking out on this topic. And, I got to participate in the miracle of the personal computer.
I know, that's such a cliche.
Number 6.
You're thinking every graduation speaker
Larry
here says
Page.
that. It's a great honor. But in my case, it really is so deeply true. Being here is more special and more personal for me than most of you know. I'd like to tell you why. A long time ago, in this cold September of 1962, there was a stop at this very university. That co-op had a kitchen with a ceiling that had been cleaned by student volunteers probably every decade or so.
Because I'm a bit older, and he has a bit more net worth than I do.
Well, thank you.
We'll have a conversation about the internet, and we'll have a conversation about Google, and we'll have a conversation about search and privacy, and also about your philosophy and a sense of how you've connected the dots and how this journey that began some time ago has such interesting prospects. Mainly, we want to talk about the future. So my first question, where is Google and where is it going?
Well, this is something we think about a lot. And, our mission that we defined a long time ago is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And people always say, is that really what you guys are still doing? And I always kind of think about that myself, and I'm not quite sure. But actually, when I think about, search, it's such a deep thing for all of us. To really understand what you want, to understand the world's information. And we're still very much in the early stages of that, which is totally crazy.
Know what's going to happen to the dollar.
Well, cash is always a bad
Number
investment.
5. Warren Buffett.
When people said cash is king a year ago, that's crazy. Cash wasn't producing anything, and it was sure to go down in value over time. And then you always want to be sure you have enough. It's like oxygen. You want to be sure it's around, but you don't need to have excessive amounts of it around. And cash, we will always have enough cash around. But anytime we have surplus cash around, I'm unhappy. I mean, I would much rather have good businesses than cash. And we found a chance in the last year or thereabouts to deploy. We came in with something over $40 billion in cash, and we've got about $20 billion now, and we've had some earnings. So we put a lot of cash to work, and I like that. No, I'd much rather own a good business than have cash. And you could get a ladder, and you could climb up on top of it, and you could say, you know, I'm sitting on top of the world, and you know, and think you're king of the world. You could, you know, you could fondle it, you could polish it, you could do all these things with it, stare at it, but it isn't going to do anything. Now, it's all you are doing when you buy that is that you're hoping that somebody else a year from now or 5 years from now will pay you more to own something that.
Well, I think my favorite line is, I have
Number
all the
4,
disadvantages necessary
Larry
for
Ellison.
success. You know, when you're raised on the south side of Chicago, you probably want to move someplace nicer. And I think if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. So I've always been very ambitious. I've always been very curious. I moved to Silicon Valley right after I dropped out of college. You know, got a job as a computer programmer. I learned how to program when I was in college, and I got a job as a computer programmer and bummed around Yosemite Valley teaching rock climbing and leading river trips during my early 20s. But the way I supported myself was as a computer programmer. And I got involved with more and more interesting and complicated computer projects and decided to start my own.
16, working on the ranch with my grandfather, which was just an incredible experience.
Number 3.
This fact by itself is of no
Jeff
value.
Bezos.
However, this ranch in South Texas would be the location at which Jeff's grandfather would begin to teach him the basics of self-reliance.
He was incredibly self-reliant.
He did everything himself. You know, he didn't call a vet if one of the animals was sick. He figured out what to do himself.
As well as the importance of taking on tasks that he didn't know how to solve.
He would take on major
Pick up my chair and move me. And by the way, I think that's, if you ask the people who work with me, that's still probably true.
And Jeff would then graduate summa cum laude, which, similar to his experience in high school, meant he graduated amongst the highest achievers in the year. And while his ability to excel in school was impressive, this was really only the beginning for Jeff. He had finished university and was about to get out into the real world, where he would begin to turn his potential into reality.
100% a year. So I decided I would try and find a business plan that made sense in the context of that growth.
Collaborateur, je m'amuse beaucoup d'incarner quelquefois de manière totalement injustifiée des critiques d'ambiance, de l'esprit, comment dirais-je, socialo-marxiste qui prédomine.
L'esprit socialo-marxiste.
Oui, mais je ne parle pas de vous. Hein.
Car la dernière...
Selon vous, faut-il dissoudre l'association?
Vous incarnez, que vous représentez dans le monde entier.
Je crois que ce qui est important, c'est d'incarner des valeurs.
Et qu'on travaille dur, assuré et de retour dans sa patrie bien aimée.
Je crois que chaque individu a en lui une idée. Et ce qu'il faut, c'est extérioriser cette idée, c'est la trouver de façon à se sentir le plus vite possible, bien dans ce qu'il fait, et de pouvoir démarrer très vite dans une voie qui pourra
I think Putin is significantly richer than me.
And here is the richest person in the world,
I mean, there's been
Elon
many times where I
Musk.
expected to lose everything. Who starts a car company and a rocket company expecting them to succeed? Certainly not me. I thought they both had less than a 10% chance of success. And frankly, I wasn't wrong in that in 2008, we had the third failure of SpaceX, and if the fourth launch had failed, SpaceX would be dead in 2008. We had no money for a fifth launch. And for Tesla, we were...
Did you think I was also going to be a chill, normal dude?
Elon Musk stems from a brutal childhood in South Africa with his abusive father, Errol.
Rough.
But it has left deep scars on him, the way his father treated...
Was PayPal. With that money, he founded SpaceX. Musk is open about his Asperger's syndrome, but he believes that expressing empathy with his employees will only slow things down.
X, the letter X. And then the AE is like
pronounced Ash.
His full name is Techno Mechanicus Musk. Of course, Musk has never been a typical CEO.
I mean, it's legal, right?
It's totally legal.
Okay.
He's smoked marijuana on camera.
Government should, I think, just try to get out of the way and not impede progress.